Hey guys, good morning. Welcome back to Adventure Cruiser. I don't think I've ever been quite so excited, yet also nervous about making a video before. Today I want to compare the Motorola APX8000 to the BKR9000. Both of these are top tier public safety radios, and I think they're both exceptional. So if you're looking for me to tell you to buy one versus the other, that's probably not going to happen here because they are both so incredible. My goal today, though, is to show you some of the differences between them so that if you are trying to make a decision on which one to buy for your department, maybe this will help. Or if you're a private user like me and you're just an aficionado, maybe something I say here will lead you one direction or the other. So let's get into it. First off, both of these radios are very similar in their abilities. They both transmit on VHF, UHF, and 7800 megahertz. Traditionally, you've had radios like this and like this that are marketed as UHF high or low. And what both of these radios have done is said, now we're combining that to simply be UHF. These radios also are on 7800 megahertz, which is what this KNG2 P800 is, and basically the same form factor as an XTS5000, also made in 7800 megahertz. Again, great radios, but as the radio technology evolves, let's talk a little bit first about what it looks like to transition from an older radio. That's not an older one. Let's go with an older version. From an older radio to a new radio. This is where I think you're gonna see the greatest benefit. Now, maybe not the greatest benefit, but this is a big benefit. There is a bit of software that Motorola has released to convert an XTS code plug to an APX code plug, and it works pretty well. In fact, some Motorola techs that I've worked with say that if they're going to create a new rather simple code plug for the APX, they're going to start with an XTS and then run it through the converter, and it gives you all of the personalities, the zones and the channels, but it does break those personalities down into Z1, C1, and it takes away the name in some cases under some menu items. It preserves it in others, but it can get kind of confusing. And I don't blame the software for that because it's doing a lot. Conversely, with the BK Technologies setup using Res, it's an extremely simple operation to convert a code plug from an older radio to a newer radio. Simply open the file, or what you can do is open Res, read an old radio, go into File, change radio type to the BKR9000 under Portable, and write it to the BKR9000, and there you go. That's it. It's as simple as that. There is no conversion process going from an older radio to a newer radio. I find that is exceptionally easy to do. Now, in my case, remember, I'm converting lots of different code plugs into just this one radio. I'm going from VHF, UHF, and 7800 into one radio. And you can do that through zone cloning. And that is a really simple process to clone multiple zones at once into this one radio. It is possible on the APX radio to also do something similar to zone cloning. It's called top-down cut and paste. If you have an APX6000, 7000, 7500, 8500, and you want to copy that code plug into this radio, you go to the top menu option, hit right-click, copy, drag it over to your other radio. Excuse me. You actually have to click on it and then physically drag it to the top menu option on your APX CPS and then drop it. It takes a few minutes because it's processing the differences between the firmware, the options, and the frequencies. So if you're gonna do a top-down drag from an 8000 to a 6000 VHF, so all band to single band, you're gonna get a lot of errors, and it's going to say these items are no longer valid, and you have to go through line by line, but it does give you a section at the bottom of CPS that explains how that's done. What you cannot do, though, is copy from a newer firmware to an older firmware. So if you have firmware 14, which so many people are fond of, you cannot copy from a top-down copy firmware 31 into firmware 14. It won't work. There are other options where you can copy specific personalities in, but it is not exceptionally friendly, though it is effective. That's where the BKR9000 really takes the lead. That is just, I spent so much time on these APXs that when I was able to convert 4 different code plugs into one radio, I was just blown away. I loved it. It was super exciting. So that's the first when it comes to converting from older radios into a newer radio system. Let's keep going on programming. So when we are writing a bit of code for a radio, let's say you've ordered 15 radios and you want to have your code plug ready to go when the radios come, the Motorola system will not let you create a new code plug simply because it doesn't understand all of the options available on your radio specifically, and it wants to make sure that whatever code you're writing will actually fit in this radio. With the BKR9000, you can hit File, New, select what type of radio it is, and create a new code plug. Then you can clone each specific code plug into different radios to give them different radio assignments. While you can clone with these also, you still can't start with a fresh blank code plug unless you have the specialized software from Motorola. That's complicated and very closely guarded. So creating a new fresh code plug for the BKR9000 or any of the BK radios is exceptionally easy. It just works great. Now, let's talk about the batteries. I do have some of the longer batteries for the APX line, but the ones that I checked had a crazy low milliamp hour output. It was like 2100 milliamp hours, and it had a battery down to here. Now, that could be my specific instance for having an older battery. I don't know, but that one was unimpressive. This battery, though, on this Motorola APX is a 3100 milliamp hour battery. This battery, which is the standard battery that comes on the BKR9000, is 4900 milliamp hours. So you do have a bit more juice in a very similarly sized battery pack. As far as typical runtime, the only way that I can answer that is by saying that when I am running this on full scan, I do NAS scanning a lot on this, I can get 2 days out of this radio, and I don't do NAS scanning on this one, but I do traditional scanning, and it's about the same. So I would say that the battery capacity within the radios is very similar. The display on the BKR9000 is a lot more closely related to the APX7000 in that it is vertical and slightly larger. Now, I personally like the way that the BKR9000 display is laid out, where it's a black background with bright white lettering, and you can change how you want, how long you want your display on, just like the APX. But I find that this is a lot easier for me to read than this, even when it's in its bright setting. I think there's a way to change that, but I haven't found it yet. So if you know how to do that, please let me know. I would really like to have a black background with light white lettering. I think that's really nice on this. As far as the display quality, I would say that there is much greater pixel density on this than there is on this, maybe by a factor of 2 to 1. This looks like an old Motorola flip phone. We're talking pre-iPhone Motorola flip phone, by the way. You can clearly see each pixel, and up here where I have the clock, which is not accurate, by the way, the 2 and the 3 and the 5 are pixelated to the point where it's not a fluid display. Okay, it's very effective. It works, but it doesn't look what we today would consider to be a good quality display. The display on the APX is recessed. The display on the BKR is flush. I have not had any issues on my BKR5000, which also has a flush display, but you know, there might be something to that. I might put a screen protector on this one just because I paid a lot of money for it and I want to keep it nice. But this display is replaceable when you buy the whole clamshell from a retailer. It's a bit involved, and to replace this, you do have to take screws apart and potentially ruin the waterproof capabilities of your radio if you're not super careful. So I would be really careful replacing that. Accessories. Well, this is a big one. So when we talk about accessories, both have a proprietary plug. Now, this has been around since 2008. So that's 15 years, almost 16. This has been around since, I'm going to say 2020, when they first released the BKR9000, which has the exact same pinout. So because this was from 2008 and this was just a couple years old, it is pretty easy to understand why there are far more accessories that fit on this than there are on this at this point. Now, I have contacted BK and I can't tell you what they told me, except to say that there are some really exciting accessories coming out for this in the next couple of years. And they have some really cool technology that they have dumped into this radio. And when we can talk about it, I absolutely will. But right now, to be perfectly honest, the APX takes the cake because it does have more opportunities for accessories, whether it is connecting to a Peltor ComTac, random push-to-talk switches, the remote speaker mic. There are a lot more options for this currently, but again, this has been around 15 years. This 2 years? I bought my 5000 2 years ago and it was one of the earlier ones. So I'm sure BK will catch up. But if you're looking for a turnkey, unfortunately, it is pretty clear that the Motorola APX is probably going to have more options than the BK in 2024. Form factor. Now, I do have an APX8000 that is not an XE version. And when I overlay that, there is a significant form factor difference here. You can see that it is shorter and a little bit narrower. But as this BKR9000 is a ruggedized radio, I find it more accurate to compare it to the size of an APX8000XE. As I mentioned in one of my other videos, the knobs are almost the exact same height, the thicknesses are almost the same, the profiles are almost the same. This is slightly more rounded, this is slightly more square, but it does have nicely rounded edges. The Motorola APX push-to-talk is slightly more protected with this proud bezel. So if you're wearing gloves, maybe that'll be easier to find. However, the BKR9000 push-to-talk is slightly bigger, and it gives you a nice tactile feedback, just like the APX. I'd say that's probably a tie. Let's talk about the other buttons on the radio. So they both have 3 buttons on the side, an emergency button on the top, a secure or clear switch, and the Motorola APX has a 3-position selector, and the BKR9000 has a 4-position selector. Now, the BK suggests that this ABCD switch is specifically used for selecting different zones or specific channels within different zones. So if you arrive on a scene, whether it's a police scene, fire scene, you can really quickly go through 4 of your favorite channels or zones. And I just changed my channels. You can do similar features with the APX8000 where you set a zone and then you have multiple different banks. You can have zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, so on. But when it comes to assigning buttons, I really believe that the BKR9000 is more friendly when it comes to assigning features in buttons. Motorola is a little bit like Apple in that they say, we know what you want, and we're not gonna let you do anything but that. The BKR9000, on the other hand, is a little bit more friendly. It's more like, let's say, Linux. Easier to work with if you know what you're doing in some cases. Well, I shouldn't say that. That's a bad analogy, because I don't know Linux, but I like these radios. What I would say, though, is that they trust you more with this radio. They say, we're going to allow you, through RES, radio editing software, to assign specific features to specific buttons as you see fit. Motorola says, that one's not going to work there. We're not going to let it. And that's a little frustrating because I like having freedom. The other thing, now this is where you guys might actually really start liking the BKR9000, and that is front panel programming. So both of these radios have the ability to front panel program. Oops, I forgot that. However, the BKR9000 lets you change all kinds of things. And you can change names of your channels, your zones, your systems. And it's intuitive. It asks questions and it tells you where to go for it. I can specifically edit channels. Let's see here, let's go down to an off-road channel. I can change all of these and it's really pretty simple. So on the APX, I'm going to select the same one. And it's also pretty simple. However, here's where the big kicker comes in. Unless your APX is preset from the factory to be front panel program or through your dealer set up for front panel program, which is where you can type in your own frequencies, you can't do it. It won't let you. It is not in the code plug to allow you to do front panel programming. Many radios are, and if you look on Fleabay, you'll see a lot of them listed as FPP, meaning front panel programming. BK has said, listen, we trust you guys. We understand that your department may or may not want you to have that ability, and so this is a setting that you can toggle in Res, the radio editing software. You can turn it on and off in Res. You don't have to pay whatever amount of money it is to Motorola to get the additional feature enabled on this. That's pretty big for a hobbyist or a firefighter or anything else. To have front panel programming already in the radio, ready to go, is really a great feature. Let's go on with how the two different companies react when you need support. So, as you know, I have a ton of BK radios and I have a ton of Motorola APX radios. And to be perfectly honest, I've never sent an APX into Depot to get it fixed. And the reason for that is I've heard a lot of horror stories, and many of them may just be rumors and not true, of where people send their radio in, Motorola says, hey, we don't like what's on this and we're not sending it back to you, or hey, we no longer support that, or anything else. And again, these are rumors, so please, if I'm wrong, let me know. But what I can say is that I have a lot of experience with sending radios into BK, and my experience is that it is exceptional. Here's how that works. If you need service on a radio, and the two instances I needed service on were radios that I bought from a surplus place and one from eBay. And I knew when I bought them that they weren't gonna work. BK has a price sheet on their website that tells you exactly how much it's going to cost to fix your radio. You send them your radio, a little bit of paperwork explaining what you think is wrong with it. They take a look at it, they fix it, they tune it, they align it, and they ship it back. I think for this specific radio, I actually had it shipped in because it wouldn't transmit. And BK was super friendly. They took my call, they directed me to a tech. The tech walked me through a couple troubleshooting items and said, okay, yeah, please go ahead and send that in. That's pretty awesome. Another example of BK really shining when it comes to service is, again, I bought one of these K&G 400s on eBay, and it had a FIPS security issue where I kept getting an alarm and then the alarm would go away after a couple of minutes of having it powered up. So I contacted BK and a tech said, oh, hey, guess what? I just wrote a code to fix that. Let me email it to you. And they didn't charge me a thing. Now that went from a unusable radio more or less to a very usable radio. And what that really was the encryption key that had been assigned to the radio before I bought it had expired. And BK was perfectly happy to help me wipe that from the radio. And it was a special encryption key. It's not, you can clear most keys normally, but that was a special one. That kind of service is really cool. Let me give you one final example of their service. I last week updated my firmware on all of my BK radios. And this radio, after updating, gave me an error. And I thought, oh no, what did I do? So I called BK. They put me through to one of their techs, Leroy, who is a very friendly guy. And he listened to what I had to say about what went wrong. And he says, hey, I think you loaded the wrong firmware. I think you loaded the firmware for the KNG, not the KNG2. Why don't you try reloading that update for the KNG2? I did that and it worked great. Now, it's that sort of personal touch to me that gives me confidence when I'm spending thousands and thousands of dollars on radios. That to me is where this company really outpaces this company. I have in the past attempted to buy Bluetooth features. I've attempted to buy, I had an 8500 that I had some issues with. I attempted to buy the updates and the upgrades through my local dealers, multiple dealers, and I never got the features that I needed. And we're talking months, if not now, 2 years. That's hard for me. I'm a little guy. I understand Motorola doesn't have the time for me. But if you're a small department and you want quick responses, go with these guys. Seriously. Ease of ordering. I have not ordered an APX radio. All of my radios are secondhand, whether they're from eBay, other friends in the industry, or whatnot. So I can't tell you how hard or easy it is to order one of these. I can tell you that when I tried to order another APX Next, I was basically told you can't. But I don't have much experience with ordering an APX, but I do have experience with ordering a couple of BK radios, and it's a pretty simple process. There are a lot of dealers. You can contact them. They'll send you a questionnaire. Do you want all bands? Do you want a couple bands? What would you like on your radio? You fill in the tick boxes, you send it back to them. They give you a price same day, and your order is in. Very easy. Replacement parts. Traditionally, BK radios have had a lot of replacement parts available, and so I would assume moving forward they're going to do the same with the BKR9000. The APX, there are a number of online retailers where you can get just about everything if you have the ability to put it in the radio. So for replacement parts, I'm going to say it's a wash. GPS. GPS has to be paid for in this radio. It has to be a feature that's enabled by Motorola or your dealer. GPS is natively enabled on the BKR9000, and you can turn it on or off in res. Menus. On the APX, you are limited to these menu items here on the bottom of your screen. And you may go into CPS and enable all menu options, and they not all show up in here. And in some cases, that is because the features are tied to your code plug. But in other cases, it just, for some reason, I can't figure it out, menu items don't show up. So actually an example of that is if I assign this button to scan, I can't have a second button here as scan, or I can't also select this as scan. It's one and that's it. And that's frustrating. You can do a lot more with these as far as assigning buttons. And the menu in here is extensive. I have 57 menu options available. Now, all of these menu options are selectable in res, and you can turn them on or off for conventional or trunking or programming. There is a lot of control if you are a department, but if you're an end user, you can basically program the entire radio here. Let's see. Let's see if I can show that better. Yep. You can basically program the entire radio just going through the menu options, okay? It's really friendly. We're gonna save non-affiliate scan for a couple of minutes, but I definitely wanna talk about non-affiliate scan and how well it works on each radio. The antennas, in my experience, are very comparable. I do like the longer antenna on the BK. It is the same length as the long antenna on the BKR9000 and almost the same length as on the KNG2. So if you are a wildland firefighter, this antenna will work great for you. Let's talk a little bit about using them in a fire setting. In my county, every fire apparatus that responds to a wildland fire carries two radios. They carry an APX6000 or 8000, and they carry a KNG, KNG2, or now maybe a BKR5000. That is two sets of radios per apparatus and per firefighter. That's a lot of radios to keep track of. And it's a lot simpler to have one radio that does our local 7,800 megahertz RCS trunking system, and then you can switch over and have all the features of the traditional and well-loved K&G radios. So that's a big plus for this. Firmware. As I mentioned, I made a mistake and I put the wrong firmware in one of the radios and it didn't brick it. I just had to put the right firmware in. Both companies offer firmware for free, last I checked. And I would say that the ease of uploading the firmware is probably a little easier on the BKR. It takes longer on the APX. I think both companies are very intentional about continually updating their systems and trying to release things that are functional. And I know for a fact BK likes getting feedback. I don't know about Motorola liking getting feedback, but I would say based off of the firmware releases, both are very intentional in that. Both are, there's a lot going on here, guys. Okay. So again, I'm going to save non-affiliate scan for last because I really feel like non-affiliate scan is a big deal. If you want to create a code plug for a radio, as I do typically, I download the Excel file from Radio Reference, and then I parse it out and I mix and match until I get a layout that I like. BK, if you go to File, Export, Excel document, and you check all the selections, it does every major feature as a new tab in an Excel spreadsheet. So what I typically will do is if I know that I'm going to add a bunch of zones, and I'll give you an example of that here in a minute. Now, keep in mind, all of these zones are receive only in my case because I do not have the authority to talk on them, and I respect that a lot. So here you have a bunch of different CAL FIRE zones. Now, each zone here has between 30 and 90 channels. What I do is I create a new zone, I add one channel, it doesn't matter what it is, and I create a new, basically blank zone for each zone I want to import. Then I copy and paste from my radio reference with just minor changes in the orientation of what goes where, alpha tag, receive, transmit, PLs, those sorts of things. Copy and paste it into the BKR Excel file. Then I click import. It asks me what features I want to import, what talk groups, so on, and boom, there we have it. It's as simple as that. Sorry guys, this is a long video, but it is, there's a lot going on here. Both have really nice top red displays. I should have talked about that earlier. They have very similar information on both of them. Audio quality is great on both of them. Noise canceling is really great on both of them. Standing next to, paragliding motors, both really great. Ooh, GPS, let's jump back. So what I'm going to do here is give you a demonstration of how the GPS feature, of a GPS feature on this radio that's pretty cool. So I've set up just a random channel, and I need to actually let it acquire signal first. But basically, what the BK allows you to do is once you've locked on GPS, and again, GPS is free on the BKR9000. Once you've locked onto GPS and you configure it in res, you can actually have it display the location of your other radio. So here we go. See that? The lat long? That's pretty cool. It also, if the radios are farther apart, will give you a distance to it. It will say 500 meters at a heading of 45 degrees. Really spectacular. I think that there's a lot of promise for that. I really like that feature, and I'll be doing a video about that more in the future. Okay, let's talk about non-affiliate scan. This is a big one for a lot of guys like me. Non-affiliate scan on a BK radio is, in my experience, incredibly friendly. Non-affiliate scan on this radio is a little more challenging and risky. Let me talk about what non-affiliate scan is for a moment. When you have a trunked system, there is a series of control channels that then give instructions to the radios to say, if you want to listen to this talk group, fire dispatch, for instance, then when that talk group is being transmitted, your radio will switch to a new frequency to listen. Now, I'm oversimplifying it. I get that. But the Motorola's are designed to affiliate with the network and say, hey, I'm radio ID ABC123. I'm on your network. Please tell me where to go. There are a lot of jokes about that, but the point is that these are directly linked with the network, which also means that you can talk on the network, or the trunk system, and if you are not supposed to have this radio on the system, it can be inhibited. And it's very common for radios that are trying to affiliate illegally to be inhibited, meaning that they're bricked. In Motorola's case, you have to send it back to depot. In BK's case, I don't know what to do with it. I haven't crossed that bridge because I don't need that. When you affiliate, that gives you the authority to talk on the channels if the system allows. The advantage also is that it sends out programming updates and a lot of instructions to the radio. The BK radios come with the option to not affiliate in res. Let me say that a little bit better. BK is proud of the fact that they can easily do non-affiliate scan or listening on a trunked system. It's really easy, and it's something that they are not shying away from. They've put out their own videos on how to do it, and that taught me how to do it. And I really appreciate that. There are a lot of reasons why you would want to do NAS, non-affiliate scan, even in a public safety setting. Let's say that you have a lot of mutual aid on other systems and you want to understand what's going on in your neighboring county. Like, there are very legitimate reasons, not just for the hobbyists like me. But even for the hobbyists like me, to have that ability to basically turn this into a scanner is really great. I like these better than scanners. It's easier to understand, easier to work with, better to hear, all that. But moving on, I'll put out another video specifically on how to non-affiliate scan with this, but it is easy. You put in your band plan, you put in the ID, and then using Excel, I copy in all of the different talk groups, I assign them to channels, and because BK has an option for a fully rotating channel selector knob, I can have every single talk group in fire or lifeguard or whatever I want in a zone and have access to it easily. Now, this is a feature I specifically ordered because I like that this CAL FIRE continuous knob exists. Motorola has never produced that in my understanding, and you have hard stops at each end. Now, there are reasons for hard stops. A lot of fire and police agencies will have, D2 all the way on channel 16 and dispatch 1 on channel 1 so that the guy can quickly go back and forth or what have you. I personally really like this, and it works really well with non-affiliate scan. Again, this is a feature you have to order. It typically came on the command version of the KNG and KNG2, where it just continually rotates. But that is another element that makes this radio more friendly than this. Whew, I've talked a lot, and I'm sorry that this video is so long, but I do hope that in the end, you guys will appreciate the fact that these are both really great radios. And there are a lot of things I like about the BK Technologies brand. I really appreciate the company and that they have been so friendly when I need help. I have a lot of great friends who work with Motorola, and they have been very helpful. But as an entity, I have not had the same experience with Motorola as I have BK. The same good experiences, maybe. That being said, if you have the opportunity to get either one of these radios, I would. I think that they're great. I personally will pick the BKR9000 to take with me every day rather than this one. Now, if I have a specific communication need where I need to set people up on headsets, currently I have to take this one. And I'm not disappointed by that. I think that they are both really great. But the only radio I carry with me right now is the BKR9000. Guys, I really hope that this helps. Again, I'm sorry it's so long. If there are specific questions that you have about things I did not address, please leave them in the comments. I really do try to read every comment and to address them if possible. I'm also attempting to get other brand of multi-band radios, so if you have any leads on them, please let me know. I've got a Unity coming in. I'm trying desperately to get the Kenwood VP8000. I think that'd be a fun one to play with. But please let me know what else I should talk about with these radios, what you want to learn about, and what other radios in the similar category you would like to know about. For now, that's all I've got. I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for sharing this time with me, and I look forward to chatting with you all in the comments later on. Have a great day.